You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers popularized that really funny phrase with a bunch of different commercials, but is this actually true? In society, we've accepted the term hangry, which basically means you feel negative or emotionally different if you haven't eaten food. Is hangry a real thing, and is it even supported in medicine? I talk about this and more, so let's get into the video. What's up everyone, my name's Henrik and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm breaking down a clinical trial studying the effects of 14 hours of food restriction on positive and negative emotions in women. This study was published in January of 2022, which is a pretty new study by Mégane Ackermans and others from the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. Being hangry is typically an annoying and uncomfortable feeling. With the popularization of the term hangry, it's colloquially accepted that hunger can cause anger, but lots of research suggests that it can mess with you emotionally in other ways too. And there's lots of theories out there on why. Food, first and foremost, is necessary to provide you energy, and being energetic or having energy can lead to positive emotions and feeling better. Additionally, lack of glucose from not eating releases hormones that increase cortisol, which is sort of your stress hormone, and that can lead to negative emotions. There's also another theory that says that eating food acts as a positive incentive for doing something. It's emotionally and physically feels better to eat after doing something, like going to the gym or getting some work done, or after a busy work day. To do those things and not eat after can feel worse. It's always important to note the difference between a theory and what's actually happening in normal people. Today's clinical trial effectively tests this theory of hangry, so let's break the study down. Looking to the study design, this is a pretty simple clinical trial looking at the emotional effects of restricting food in 108 healthy women with an average age of 22. All participants were self-identified as following a routine where they normally eat breakfast, and none of them had diagnosed eating disorders. Half the participants were assigned to a satiated group, and the other half assigned to a fasting group. In the satiated group, participants ate breakfast like normal and then went to the researchers for the lab/testing session. In the fasting group, participants were told to eat no food or sugar-containing drinks after 8:30 p.m. in the prior night, and to skip normal breakfast before going to the testing session. In this testing session, researchers asked 3 different questionnaires. First, they asked a series of questions based on a hunger scale, primarily to see if those who skipped breakfast actually skipped it. This is more of a compliance type of thing. Next, they asked the Profile of Mood States, POMS questionnaire, which has a lot of questions trying to gauge these 7 mood states. So you can start to figure out, the goal is to see if mood changes depending on whether or not you've eaten food, whether or not people can be hangry. Lastly, researchers asked an eating disorder questionnaire to see if any of the participants showed levels of related symptoms. Researchers asked this because one of their running theories is that people who have ED symptoms or have an ED can show positive emotions when restricting food, which is the exact opposite of what it means to be hangry. So they wanted to at least account for this to see if it was true. The results today are pretty clear. Figure 1 shown here shows the level of negative emotions for 5 of those emotions and compares satiated versus fasted groups. For everything but depression, there was statistically significant increases in those negative emotions for people who fasted, as indicated by the asterisks. Depression wasn't statistically significant, but you can still see the general trend, which is still interesting to me. Figure 2 shown here shows the level of positive emotions for esteem and vigor. And as you can see, both were increased in satiated individuals, but only vigor was statistically significant. Still a very clear result. When looking at the results of the eating disorder questionnaires, high scores on those tests indicating more symptoms were also related to higher negative emotions, but no relation with positive emotions. So this was really opposite what the researchers were expecting with respect to this data. Okay, I think this study is really cool because it literally shows that being hangry is a real thing. Some of us might think this is obvious. Yeah, when people don't eat, they feel grouchy or annoyed or tired or whatever. But it's different to see it in a clinical trial when lots of different variables are being controlled for. Today's trial showed that skipping breakfast and restricting food as opposed to not really makes you have more negative emotions and less positive ones. Now, this is not the first study to analyze food restriction and emotion, but it's the first one to use a relatively large sample size with over 100 people while taking eating disorder symptoms into consideration. A study from 2012 found that after 20 hours of food deprivation, healthy women had increased negative mood, but women with bulimia, which is a type of eating disorder or binge eating disorder, reported mood improvement after food deprivation. Another study from 2008 found that food deprivation caused reductions in positive emotions, but no changes in negative emotions, with a sample size of about 15 people. Another study from 2012 found the opposite, that food deprivation caused an increase in negative emotions, but no changes in positive emotions, with a with a sample size of about 20 people. That's really why today's study, with such a relatively massive sample size, helps draw some informative conclusions about what Hangry is. Okay, so this is a great study and it tells us lots of valuable information, but there's lots of limitations to note. First of all, we have to assume the participants actually restricted themselves when it came to restricting food. They could have not done that and not told the researchers, and that could mess with the data. Second, there's only one iteration or one day of testing. I would have loved to see if researchers did this type of experiment once a week or once a month over an extended period of time to see if the results hold up and to make sure today or that one day they did wasn't a fluke. I would have also loved to see if there was a crossover design done where people in the fasted group switched over to the satiated group to see if that would have made a difference. Third limitation, the researchers only looked at food restrictions starting from the night before up until skipping breakfast. Maybe breakfast could be different as opposed to skipping a meal sometime during the day, like lunch, and to see if that would change things. That would be interesting to me. Fourth limitation is that the researchers only looked at women, and they said they did this specifically because women report more dieting and food restriction and have more diagnosed eating disorders, which is unfortunately true. But I would love to see if the results hold up for guys as well. I would personally assume they do, but realistically you can't make those types of assumptions anywhere in research. For a brief summary with some takeaways, a clinical trial studying the effects of 14 hours of food restriction in young women found that those in a fasted state had more negative emotions and less positive emotions when compared to those with no food restriction. The study was the first to use a large sample size while taking into account eating disorder symptoms, and it undeniably showed that being hangry can be a real thing. Besides simply showing that, the study is very helpful in the context of medicine and in life in general. Lack of food can cause potentially undesirable changes in mood. Definitely eat, or at least don't be hungry before doing things where you need to be your best. Maybe during work, a presentation, a test, or maybe even a date. It also shows that pure food restriction or starving yourself for the purpose of weight loss is not effective because it can seriously mess with your emotions. And there's definitely a lot more other effective ways at accomplishing weight loss. In short, clinical research supports the idea of hangry, and who knows, maybe even Snickers is right. You're not you when you're hungry. Regardless, that's all I had for today. Check out my description for the sources and studies I've used, and don't forget to click that like and subscribe button to check out some more content and support the channel. I hope you all learned something and have a good one. Thanks.